All right, today we are going to start the new unit on data and statistics. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and in the back of my journal, my very back page, I'm going to flip that over to make that my new table of contents. We are on page 51, and we are going to be talking about scatter plots. Okay, scatter plots. So we are on page 51, and we are talking about scatter plots. Okay. A scatter plot is a graph, okay, with points plotted about it. So it's plotted to show the relationship between two sets of data. Okay. Now, a scatter plot usually has a large amount of points. Okay, and you're just using a scatter plot to look for associations. Okay, so it's a graph. So we're going to make one real quick. And we're going to say hours studying versus test grades. Okay. All right, so you know that the lowest you get on a test is a 50. Okay, and we're going to go, you can get 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, I need to go up a little bit more with this, 95, and then 100. Okay, that looks a little messy, but you get the point. And then let's say you spend half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours studying. Okay. Let's say person A. We're going to go with, let's say we have 12 people in our class. We're going to plot their grades. Okay. One person didn't spend any hours studying. Okay, they spent no hours studying, and they made a 75. So that's going to go there. No hours, made a 75. Next person spent a half an hour studying, and they made an 80. Then another person spent 1 hour studying and made an 80. And then we had a person who spent an hour and a half, or 1 hour, 1 hour studying and made an 85. Okay. Another person spent an hour and a half studying and made an 85. Another person spent an hour and a half studying and made a 95. Another person spent 2 hours studying and only made a 90. Excuse me. Another person spent 3 hours studying and made a 100. And then somebody spent 4 hours studying and only made a 90. Okay. What do we notice about this? Is this going positive, negative, or are they just all over the place? Okay, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at how you study data. Okay, what trend do you see? Most cases, the more hours you spent studying, okay, the higher your grade goes, right? That's the trend. Okay, we call those trends associations. So an association a trend that describes how the data is related. Okay, a trend that describes how the data is related is your association. So you have a positive association, kind of like what we just talked about there. Or this would be like if you have data okay, I'm going to use this red line. You draw a trend line. Okay, a trend line is something that goes right basically in the middle of this data, or in the same direction. Okay, this is a positive association. When you draw your trend line, it's that it's very close. All of them are pretty close. They have like a magnet close to that line. Okay. This would be like my trend line. A negative association, if it's going down, it's like a graph, or the slope. This is a negative association. And then we have no association. That means that your data is kind of all over the place. Like you can't really tell if it has a positive or negative trend. Okay. Now let's talk about what an outlier is. An outlier is going to be like that range when you test the average person who, let's say you have an outlier up here, is you have somebody who doesn't study at all and makes 100. Okay? If I have somebody up here who doesn't study at all and makes 100, that doesn't really go with the trend, right? The trend is that the more hours you study, the higher your grade is going to be. So that's just a rare occasion. It's a fluke, okay? It's a point that doesn't go with the association. Okay, it's called an outlier. It's a point that doesn't go with the association. So if I have let's say a positive trend, my outlier would be like out to the side. Okay, it's one that's kind of off and away from the clustered group. All right. When you get questions when you see questions related to scatterplot, what it's going to ask you is you're going to have to read the hours studying the graph to know what they're talking about. So it might say something like, if Johnny spent, let's say, if Johnny spent 2.5 hours studying, based on this scatter plot, what would his grade be? What should his grade be? It follows within a positive trend line, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to look at 2.5 hours. If I go up here, where is it about? Where does it fall within this trend line? It would fall about a 95. Okay, so you're going to estimate that it would be about approximately, this little sign means approximately, a 95. Positive association goes up, negative association goes down, and if they're all over the place, that's no association.